new southbound policy is just beginning to have an effect, quite frankly, because the government is still preoccupied with pandemic recovery and facing the economic problems. No? But I have seen a bit of news of Taiwan and the Philippines in talks to engage in cooperation in relation to those economic problems. The most pressing one right now is of food supply of certain commodities being affected by inflation. It's quite disproportionate with respect to some items. No? But I've seen that Taiwan and the Philippines are looking into possible cooperation on that, no? Perhaps in terms of supply or in terms of assistance to developing farming and agricultural areas. I've also seen some news about cooperation, particularly in terms of migrant workers. The Philippines is currently facing some issues with other countries, so it just makes sense for it to look at other places, other markets for this. And Taiwan has traditionally and historically been one of the stronger markets for Philippine workers. So well, I wish that there would be more, though. There are many other areas of cooperation that I think would be worth looking into, particularly in the technical fields. So hopefully there will be some more news on that later in the year.
How has China's aggression in the South China Sea affected its relations with the United States?
Well, definitely, China has had problems, shall we say, with maintaining its good relations with its neighbors. And I think that right now it is suffering from a backlash of its aggressive moves, especially in the South China Sea. At the same time, concern has been raised over its intentions with respect to Taiwan because of the potential for armed conflict and instability in the region, no? Should the mainland decide to be more aggressive and forceful in its actions. ASEAN, including the Philippines, are right now relatively quiet, shall we say. Perhaps they do not want to prematurely reveal their hand, but definitely um, they will be affected by any kind of instability in the region. So I would expect that they would be into going into a bit of contingency planning as well as coordination with other countries that are also concerned, especially external countries like the US and Japan. Whether it brings them closer on this issue, I think the jury is still out on that, unfortunately, because we still have basically we still have ASEAN members being more concerned about the potential negative effects of any kind of instability in the region on them. No? So I think it will still take a bit more time before everyone has some kind of consensus or alignment on how to respond to the mainland's increasingly provocative moves and policies.
How do you see the visit by President Marcos Jr. to China, meeting with Xi Jinping? Has that affected its relations with the United States and vis a vis Taiwan?
Actually, I think not, because the first meeting, while it was seen as a diplomatic success, in terms of its actual effects, actual benefit, that remains to be seen. Once again, we've seen a lot of promises being made, but I think the government will have learned by now that promises by China that come out of these kinds of meetings do not necessarily translate into action. In the meantime, the Philippines and the United States relations, especially with respect to defense, have seen quite a flurry of activity. We have had various visits by high officials. No, even after Vice President Harris came last November, there have been a string of visits of other officials, no? Including from their defense department. And today, I think they just announced that there was some progress made on talks on implementing the enhanced defense cooperation arrangement. Definitely, these will be linked somehow to concerns over what happens in with Taiwan and the future of the region. No? So I think that will be a factor, no? And in a way, that is also an indicator that U.S.-Philippine relations have not really been greatly affected by the Philippine-China relations.